Welcome to Brandworking TV with your host, Lauren Clement, from the Ultimate Business Propeller.
Rhea's dad left when she was just 6, and her mother continued to raise the family single-handedly until her father re-entered her life and asked her to live with him when she was a teenager. Rhea's mum said no, and Rhea, a typical teenager, rebelled. A downward spiral of alcohol, drugs, and boys eventually led to Rhea's leaving home and moving in with her dad, only to discover that life wasn't picture perfect there either. At 15, she was on her own. She married at 18 and was pregnant by 19. Eventually, her 13-year marriage declined and she decided to leave, still addicted to drugs and alcohol and in severe physical pain. She hit rock bottom and considered giving up and committing suicide. But a trip to see family in the USA opened her eyes to the possibilities of life. Unfortunately for Rhea, she was diagnosed with Ross River virus and became addicted to morphine. Then after months of testing was told she had incurable Crohn's disease. This forced her to reckon with herself and choose a different path. She realised that she needed to make a choice to change her mindset and to heal herself. The moment she made that choice to do something different, everything changed. She's now an author, qualified counsellor and mindset mentor. Rhea, thank you so much for coming on Brandworking TV. It's awesome to have you here on the show.
Thank you.
Now Rhea, obviously you've had incredible ups and downs throughout your life, but one of the things that you talk about a lot is the importance of making choices and deciding for yourself that you want to be the change rather than letting the environment around you make you who you are. Why is that so important to you, and how would you encourage other people to do the same thing, to make choices and be the change themselves?
I just probably my biggest thing would be that listening to so many influences on internet, teachers, parents, and yeah, we've all got our own experiences, but for me, it's literally about shedding all of those other people's opinions and their experiences and finding one that fits me and the way that I want to lead my life. And sometimes I don't know anything more than the first step, but it's just literally about taking that first step and the rest of it will all just fall into place.
Brilliant, I love it. And through those ups and downs, and one of those obviously was almost losing yourself when you left your mum's home and the protection of her household and then decided on your own path and discovered it wasn't quite what you'd expected it to be. And you became the person who was lost. And then later on, it was your mother that was lost and the shoe was on the other foot.
Yeah.
That sort of went full circle. How do you now look back on that and decide, was that just the way things were, or could you have done things differently?
I'm sure I could have done things differently, but I think everything in life comes full circle, and I think that we're all meant to experience having the shoe on the other foot in different life events. And I think when you can really empathise with how somebody else feels in that moment of tragedy, loss, or anything like that, it transforms your own experience.
And you were saying to me as well, it's through your book as well, through when you read through that story, that you had got to a place where you were healing yourself and you'd been to a retreat and you had, I guess, more tools and a bit of different approach to your life.
Yeah.
Then when your mother did go missing, you were probably more capable to deal with it?
Most definitely. I had resources to rely on. I had people to contact more than just, there was once a time when I just used to use coping mechanisms like smoke and drink and numb myself out of that pain. Whereas when that event took place, I had to I literally had all those resources to rely on to be able to source myself and be able to keep that feeling within myself that I just had this inner peace to know that everything was going to work out. And I didn't know which way, but I just knew it was going to be okay, whichever way it happened. And to have that peace on whichever side of the spectrum it fell, that was what got me through that whole event.
Because it was quite scary at the time. Your mother wasn't the only woman who'd gone missing at that time. There were other women who'd disappeared.
Yeah, about 4 almost.
So the immediate thought is she's another one of these victims.
Yes.
It's happened to her as well.
Yes.
How long was it in total that she had been missing for?
We were on to the 4th day, so it was 4 nights, and yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Traumatic experience. And,
Yeah.
and as you say, unless you'd gone through your own healing, do you think you would have just run away from it if you hadn't had that process of finding yourself?
Absolutely, absolutely. I would have done whatever I could have just to stop feeling that amount of loss that I was feeling, but I didn't want to feel. I wouldn't have wanted to feel it.
And you wouldn't have been able to work through the process of your emotions and your feelings to actually take action.
Well, I didn't even know really what feelings were until after I started doing my own healing process. Yeah.
Wow. So your mum was found, which was obviously very exciting, and
Yeah.
everyone's very relieved.
Yes.
And how's your relationship now with your mum, given that it's sort of been this happened and I left you and I hurt you as a teenager, and then you left me later on in life, and that was really difficult for me. Now you're back in the same world together. What's your relationship like now?
It's pretty much the same. Like, the healing process is happening for both of us at different levels, and it's just more of an understanding for where she's at in her journey, and not having having my expectations rule my judgment, or rule my thoughts of how she should be healing. Because there was that, while I was writing the book, I was, she should go on the retreat and help herself as quick as I did, and that's just not how it works for everybody.
So everybody's got their own path.
Everybody does.
So what would be your biggest lesson that you would like to share with the world for anybody who's perhaps going through a period of finding themselves, or maybe someone who knows someone who needs to do that and having expectations around that? What would you suggest that they do most?
I would just be there and listen. That would be at the end of the day, because you can resource information and you can give that to them, but at the end of the day, I would say that listening to that person and just being there for them without judgment is the utmost highest thing that you could possibly do for that person.
And I guess for somebody who's going through it themselves, is that message that this is your journey. That it's unique. You don't need to meet other people's expectations. You take your time and your approach to get what you need to get where you need to be. Yeah,
and people, including myself, I used to see that everybody, we all have our issues and we all have things that crop up. But when you can see yourself in that person and that person in you, it just changes things, and you know that if you've been through it, that they can also find their own way to get through their journey as well.
And it will be okay.
It will be.
And it was interesting, we were talking as well, I mean, mental illness gets mentioned a lot when you tell your story, but it's very important that people understand that's just one aspect, it's just one part of what happens in life, and there are circumstances and beliefs and all sorts of other things that come into it. What do you think your best coping mechanism is when it comes to just your own state of mental health, of being as good as you can be on any given day?
My best coping mechanism would be to literally meditate and come back to myself and silence the thoughts. Just silence of all of the influences that are outside telling me to go this way, that way, and confusing my own path. Whereas when I sit in that meditation and I quiet my mind, everything, all of the importance to all those that anxiety, those different influences, it all just washes away.
And you're left with you.
I'm just left with me.
Brilliant. And you make your decisions and your choices.
Yes.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yes.
Now we talk about becoming the man in the mirror, making a better version of yourself. What would be the first step to somebody who's watching this with us chatting about how you deal with coping mechanisms, how you deal with life? What would be your biggest bit of advice to someone who wants to be a better version of themselves? Where should they start?
Going back to my experience, it was just finding something that fits with you, finding something that you feel that you need to do for you. As scary as it is, you just need to go ahead with it. I mean, the minute that I made the decision to find someone that would fix my depression, I wanted to run away from it every single minute. And I just kept on going through with it. And I did try to run. I didn't even want to hop on the plane. I didn't want to get off the plane. I didn't want to leave the airport. I didn't want to leave the car that was taking me to the retreat. So there was many occasions where I could have bowed out and stopped that choice to help myself. But I'd already put it in motion and I'd made that decision and I went with it.
Is that a big part of it, making decisions and making yourself stick with them?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Having that belief that this is the right path for you?
Paramount. It changes your whole course of life.
And I guess it doesn't really matter which way you do that, whether it's a retreat or an inspirational book or a YouTube series or something that you use to really focus on getting you to be where you want to be.
Yeah, it starts with your choice. That's, at the end of the day, that's all it is. If you believe that a book will help you, then it will help you. If you believe that a retreat will help you, it will help you. It's about taking that step for yourself to make a difference in your own life.
And then after that, it's just one step every day.
And sometimes the days can seem very long, and sometimes it's just about each moment. And so if you can get through each moment, then you get through the days. Before you know it, you've already passed through that situation.
Ria, if you could now go back to your teenage self and give her any piece of advice, what do you think it would be?
Just keep standing in my truth and just follow my own inner truth.
And how important that self-belief in that truth is.
Yes.
Wow. Because
it's inside, regardless of the influences that are out there that, push it down, suppress it, knock it down with unkind things. And when you go within, it is always there. You never lose it.
Very powerful. Ria, thank you very much for sharing your story with us today on Brandworking TV. Ria's book, I Love You, I'm Sorry, is an extraordinary story and a journey of finding yourself and finding your mum, and really that full circle of life.
Yes.
And discovering exactly who you want to be and making those choices.
Yeah.
Ria, if you want to get hold of Ria's book, it is called I Love You and I'm Sorry, and you can get that at this very address. Ria, thank you so much for being on the show today. It's been an absolute pleasure to chat with you and to share your story. Thank you for being on.
Thank you.
So that's it for this episode of Brandworking TV. Remember, you have the most amazing natural gifts and talents to share with the world, and you do deserve to be well known, well paid, and wanted.